think we lost. People might got disconnected here. I want to continue to share the bhajan and Prabhu comes back.
विचारणैकनिपुणं तद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण्यकरं.
Prabhu, are you back? You're mute, Prabhu. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhu, we can.
Okay. How do I get the full screen? Speaker. Okay, here we go. Hare Krishna, everyone. So we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava, and then I will also do the Mangalacharan prayers, and then we'll continue with the today's class. Okay. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Munatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll do the Mangalacharan. If everybody wants to follow, you can look at the introduction of Bhagavad Gita, and it is stated there. It's all there in the introduction. Om Ajnantimarandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarupyascha Kripa Sindhupya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gauravakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are going to read the verse from chapter 4, verse number 10. Let me put it on this screen. Let's see. First of all,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, you're trying to share something?
yes, I want to, and I want to go to the saved item. How do I go there?
Saved
go to
items. So
exit full screen.
yeah, you do exit full screen, Prabhuji.
Okay, here we go. I think I have it now.
You have access to share. You should be able to share the document.
Yes. Yeah, now I think I have it now. Okay. Let's see, where do we have share? Are you able to see it?
No, Prabhuji. So you got to click on the share in the center of your screen. At the bottom of your screen, there's a share screen button.
Right. It is concealed right now. So how do I unconceal it?
It's concealed.
Yeah, it's not showing.
You minimize, you exit the full screen, right?
Yeah, minimize it. Let's see.
It should be at the bottom of your screen. You know, where you have the sound, like, mute, stop video and all that. Or not?
There is this thing that does not allow me to do this. Is the green ISKCON Round Rock is sharing computer sound. How do you get out of that?
Can you quickly send that page to Sanjay through email attachment? He can do it quickly.
No, Prabhuji, you have access to share. I mean, it's difficult to see your screen. I cannot say. If you click on share screen, then what do you get?
Okay. Do you see the at the very top? It says ISKCON Round Rock is sharing computer sound. That if that is gone, if you can remove that.
Oh, I'm not. You can stop that and go ahead, Prabhuji. Because like you have a spotlight is on yourself, so you should be able to share it now.
I know that the green little thing that comes, but okay.
Okay, I've done it. Okay, try now.
Are you able to see it now?
Yes, Prabhuji, it's coming.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
How do we make it a little larger?
So Prabhuji, at the bottom of your screen, on this PowerPoint, there should be like a start screen, start slideshow or something. Bottom right.
Yeah.
Yeah, click on that. Yes, that's the one. Yeah, this is good enough. We can it's a large screen for us.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, what happened here?
No, you're good. We
Okay.
can see your screen.
So today's topic is key to pure love of Godhead, and the text is 4:10, and we'll go through that. So I will start by repeat after me. Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, Manmaya, Mama, Upashritaha, Bahavo, Gnana, Tapasa, Puta, Madbhavam, Agataha. Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha, Manmaya, Mamupashritaha, Bahavo, Gnana, Tapasa, Puta, Madbhavam, Agataha. The synonyms are that Vita means freed from, Raga is attachment, Bhava, fear, Krodha, the anger, Matmayaha, fully in me, Mama, in me, upashritaha, being fully situated, bhavaha, many, gnana, of knowledge, tapasa, by the penance, putaha, being purified, matbhavam, transcendental love for me, agataha, attained. Translation: being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. This verse comes after the text number 4.9, which says that, which I covered last time. It says that Janma karma cha me divyam yo me vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. This is a very important verse, and we covered it last time, which says that one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, Arjuna. So after this verse comes this 4.10, which says that being freed from attachment. So these are the conditions. You have to be free from attachment, fear, and anger. And besides that, one should be fully absorbed in Krishna and taking refuge in me, being always dependent on Krishna. Many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me. So one has to have knowledge of Krishna also. In the purport, Prabhupada writes that, as described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. In chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita, it is said that at the time of death, if one remembers Krishna, then he acquires Krishna's nature. So here Prabhupada is making a point here that those who are too materially affected, they have a hard time understanding the personal nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. So it needs some work, how to get into a state where you can understand who the Supreme Absolute Truth is. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily conception of life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be a person. Because these people are very materially attached, they can only think of people around them, and they cannot think of spirituality, that Krishna is spiritual and he is a person. That is very hard to understand. When you say person, that Supreme is a person, they think of him as having material body. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. These are the qualities: imperishable, full of knowledge, and eternally blissful. That is spiritual body. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead has the spiritual body. And we also have spiritual body. But right now we are in the material world and we have got material bodies. In the material world, the concept is that the body is perishable, it is full of ignorance and completely miserable. We see that, we go through all kinds of miseries, and we also see that the body perishes at a certain time. Therefore, people in general keep the same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic man, the form of gigantic material manifestation is supreme. So in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 11, we talk about the universal form, Vishwarup. And so for these people who are materialistic people, the concept of universal form appeals to them. And for such materialistic men, the form of gigantic material manifestation is supreme. And consequently, they consider the supreme to be impersonal. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. The whole aim that people think about is that we have to be liberated. So when we talk about Krishna is a person, and we individual are also persons, and we acquire after certain sadhanas, we become more aware of spirituality. And so we are still persons, but spiritual persons. But this idea does not appeal to them because they think that personality means material body. Continuing, when they are informed that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of becoming persons again. The whole idea is they want to get rid of the personality. They want to get rid of the material body. So when we say that you are also a person and Krishna is also a person, that does not appeal to them. And so Prabhupada writes, so they naturally prefer a kind of merging into the impersonal void. Impersonal void, nothingness. Generally, they compare living entities to the bubbles of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. So when we look at bubbles in the ocean, after some time, they disappear and they merge into the ocean. So they think of all this creation, all these individual living entities with material bodies, at some point in time, they will merge into the supreme. That is the Mayavad philosophy or impersonal philosophy. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence attainable without individual personality. This is what they believe. This is a kind of fearful stage of life, devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. So they don't have the knowledge of spirituality. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all, being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation. They become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Now we talk about Krishna being far, far away and also very close. These are two contradictory things. We also talk about he is smaller than the atom and he is also quite big. So these are contradictory statements, and these kind of statements, they puzzle these people and they just forget about going further into studying the spirituality. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause. We know from our day-to-day life, mixing with our friends and family, do we at all talk about spirituality? Do we at all think about that we are spirit beings and Krishna is also a spirit? We don't. So there is this lack of knowledge about spirituality. So they think of merging into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything, being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. Prabhupada continued, this last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication. So when a person is frustrated and don't understand anything, they say, well, I'm going to relax with a bottle of beer or intoxicant. And their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. They think that they are having spiritual vision, but they are having hallucination. One has to get rid of all three stages of material consciousness. What are the three stages? One is the attachment to material life. The second one is fear of spiritual personal identification. They don't want to become person again. When we talk to them that you are a spiritual being, a personal identity is there, and as a spiritual being, they don't like that. And the third one is the conception of void that arises from frustration in life. They think that, well, there is nothing, and after I die, I merge into nothing. To get free from these three stages of the material concept of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord. Prabhupada says, guided by bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional life. So Prabhupada makes it a point that one has to get involved with devotional life, devotional service, and that is directed by a bona fide spiritual master. So you take shelter of a spiritual master. The last stage of devotional life is called bhava. So when you progress in devotional life, then you come to a stage where you start feeling love for Godhead, transcendental love of God. Now, according to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the science of devotional service, Rupa Goswami writes that Adav Shraddha Tatah Sadhu Sango Atha Bhajana Kriya Tato Anartha Nivritti Syata Tato Nishta Ruchis Tatah Atha Saktis Tato Bhavas Tatah Premabhyudanchati Sadhakanam Ayam Premanaha Pradurabhave Bhavet Kramaha. And what this means is that Rupa Goswami writes that in the beginning, so we are starting from scratch. In the beginning, one must have faith, a preliminary desire for self-realization. So one has to have that interest should be there, that I'm fed up of this life, material life. I would like to know who exactly I am. So a desire for self-realization should be there. And then he says that this will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. So it is natural to find out people with the same interest. And so such a person who has desire of self-realization associates with persons who are spiritually elevated. And in the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master. So one has to get a spiritual master, get initiated by him, and be under his control and do what he asks you to do. And under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. So according to this instruction by Rupa Goswami, the spiritual master directs the student how to proceed in devotional service. By execution of devotional service under the guidance of spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment, attains steadiness in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about absolute personality of Godhead. So these three things happen. One is that one becomes free from material attachment slowly and gradually. And it comes about when one realizes that this material attachment is causing problems in my daily life. So slowly and gradually he removes the attachments. Then he becomes steady. So steady in devotional service. He doesn't think of anything else but devotional service. He becomes steady in that process, in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing about absolute personality of Godhead. Acquires a taste means that he likes to hear about Krishna. He likes to hear about Krishna's Leelas and so on from Srimad Bhagavatam. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness. So once one starts enjoying and liking the the Krishna activities, then he starts further attachment, not only just to the activities, but to Krishna himself and to Krishna consciousness, which is to become fully conscious of Krishna. In every activity, he thinks of Krishna. And this then matures into bhava, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. So it leads to, Krishna consciousness leads to bhav. And bhav is one step before the last step of prema. So real love for God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So when one starts doing the devotional service, and when one has reached that stage of prem, he will experience the prem in every activity of transcendental service. Prabhupada continues saying that so by the slow process, again, we cannot expect this to be overnight. It has to be, it's a slow process of devotional service. Under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. So one will become more clear about who he is, and that he is a individual spiritual person, and Krishna is another spiritual person. And the Bhagavad Gita says that we are part and parcel of him, and we are eternal servant of him. So his position is clear. His position is clear that he's supposed to serve Krishna. And then he forgets about the philosophy of voidism. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. That is the purport. Now, what exactly is attachment, anger, and fear? So in this verse of chapter 4, number 11, it says attachment. And earlier in chapter 2, verse 62, it states that while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. So when we think about certain objects, then we are attached to them. And so we think about them, and we form a eternal bond that I like this and I don't like that. I like this kind of food, I like that kind of flower. So that attachment comes. So the idea is that one should not be contemplating on sense objects. One should be contemplating on Krishna, and forget about contemplating on sense objects. It's not easy because we have gone through millions and millions of lives in material bodies, sometimes as cats, as dogs, as trees, plants, insects. So that concept is still there. And it's not easy to get rid of material concept. We tend to contemplate on them. Certain dishes, we like to eat, and we contemplate on them. So here it is very clearly stated that you should not be attached, free from attachment. Then the verse 62 continues that from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. So this is the cause of anger. The cause of anger is that we have attachment, and we are not able to fulfill that, and so we get angry. So this is the cause of anger, which is desire is not fulfilled. Therefore, one should reduce material desires to have desires to only have desires to please Krishna and not anyone else. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 70, I haven't written it here, but it says that Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapaha pravishanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. The translation is that a person who is not disturbed by what? By the incessant flow of desires. We experience that. We have, throughout the day, we experience so many desires coming in our mind. So a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, and it is exemplified like, rivers are there which flow into the ocean. So these desires flow into our mind. They enter like rivers into the ocean. But what do we know about the ocean? Which is ever being filled, but is always still. So the ocean is always still. It doesn't get disturbed because of the rivers flowing into it. Such a person alone can achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. If we try to satisfy our desires, then one desire leads to another, and so on. So one who is not disturbed by such incessant flow of desires is the one who achieves peace. And in self-realization, one has to have peace of mind, so you can focus your mind on Krishna and get involved in the devotional service and be Krishna conscious. The third item that was mentioned was that fear. One has to be free from fear. And that is the hardest one. Why is it so hard to be free from fear? So what is the cause of fear? If we know the cause of fear, then we can get rid of it. So fear arises because the self or the soul is identified with the body. So when soul identifies itself with the body, and whatever happens to the body, the soul thinks it happened to me. And because of the material senses, our body experiences pleasures and distresses. And because the soul has identified with the body, he thinks that all this pleasure and distress is happening to him. Therefore, this anticipation of distress causes fear. Anticipation that I may get hurt, these people may hurt me. If I jump from here, I may fall into the well. This kind of anticipation because of the identification of the soul with the material body. So when one stops identifying oneself with the body and factually understands oneself to be a spirit soul, here Prabhupada writes factually understands. One cannot say that, well, I don't have fear. No, one has to be factually understood that he is spirit soul and that he is separate from the material body, and that what happens to the material body doesn't really affect me, the spirit soul. Because spirit soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and the fear then goes away. Why? Because the self does not experience material pleasure or pain. The self does not really experience material pleasure or material pain. Like in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it talks about it cannot be cut with any weapon, it cannot be burned, it cannot be wetted with water, it cannot be dried with wind. So the soul cannot be affected by these. And these are the items that create problem to the material body. Like cutting material body causes pain. Being burnt by fire, material body feels pain. Being wet by water, material body will know that it is wet, and being dried by wind. So these are all things that causes pain and different sensation to the material body. But if we are to that stage where the soul or the self does not identify with the body, then we don't get those kind of identification that I am the material body. Now, do the highly spiritually evolved people in their material bodies experience pain? And the answer is yes. Recently, we had Maharaj who come and gave a talk, and I asked that question, and his answer was that yes, they do feel pain, but their perception is different. So the perception is different. They don't perceive it as a pain, but they know it to be a blessing from Krishna. Now we in Prabhupada's Lilamrita, we have read that he had suffered many times, heart attack, bodily problems, but he always thought that it was something that was sent by Krishna as a blessing. And so that is the perception he has. And that is what the highly spiritually evolved people think about their material bodies, and experience pain as being a blessing. So why? Because he perceived pain as a blessing from Krishna. And we have got several examples in our ISKCON where many of the highly advanced devotees experienced pain, suffering, illnesses, but they look at all those as blessing from Krishna. It's not easy to think that, I am having a yellow fever and that is a blessing from Krishna. It's not that easy to figure. But when we know that Krishna has a plan for us, and this is part of the thing, that way you can perceive it as being something different from pain or suffering. Do we experience fear? Do these people who are spiritually advanced experience fear? And the answer is no. Why? They have full faith in Krishna. What do they think? That he is always there to protect them. He is always there with him. So Krishna is everywhere. He is right beside you. He is inside you. He is outside you. And they have factually understood, I'm saying factually understood that Krishna is with them. And if Krishna is with them, then there is no need to fear. Prabhupada mentions about his personal example about his son, who was a little boy, and he was traveling with Prabhupada, and in the train, the boy was asked, "Where is your ticket? Show me your ticket." And the Prabhupada's son went ahead and just went to his father and held his hand. So that is the protection. That is the protection the boy got. And so Prabhupada explains that this is how it is that we do not experience fear, because Krishna is always there. We factually know that Krishna is there. How about attachments? No, they are attached to Krishna only. They are not attached to any material things. So this is again requires practice and a perception that attachments, they come, but we don't want to get attached to them. Do they get angry? The highly spiritually evolved people, do they get angry? And the answer is no. They don't have material desires to fulfill, and therefore no anger. Yet we sometimes see that many of these highly evolved spiritual people do get angry, and there is a purpose behind there. They want to either direct us to the correct way so that you are on the right path, And the other possibility is that if they get angry because of certain story or something, that is because like, Hanuman, he got angry and burned the whole Lanka. So you can use anger to serve Krishna. So anger can be used for serving Krishna, and anger can also be used for directing our disciples to the correct path. In that case, you do not consider anger as bad. Anger is necessary sometimes. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur one time got angry with Srila Prabhupada because Prabhupada was talking to one of the students, and Prabhupada later explained that he was talking to the other student because he was asking that he had not understood what Saraswati had said. So getting angry with a disciple to direct him to the correct path is necessary. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did get angry with Prabhupada because he was talking, he was not listening. That was the reason behind that. Okay. Now, I would like to do the conclusion here with talking about a passage from Srimad Bhagavatam. So in conclusion, verse 410 talks about achieving love of Godhead, being free from attachment, anger, and fear. These are the three items that were mentioned in verse 10 of chapter 4. Furthermore, Krishna advises Arjuna that one should be fully absorbed in him. And at two places in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Manmanabhava Madbhakto in chapter 9, and in chapter 18, he again says, Manmanabhava Madbhakto. Always think of me, get absorbed in me. So that is the necessity. One should be absorbed in Krishna. Take refuge in him. So you should be dependent on him and be knowledgeable about him. So know everything about Krishna, who he is, what he does, how he runs this whole universe. In this way, a person achieves transcendental love for him. This is the goal of life. So in this regard, there are four Kumaras. In short, they are known as Sanat Kumar. These are four Kumaras who were created by Lord Brahma from his mind. And the reason for creating them was to populate the creation. Brahma was given the task of populating the universe. And so he was trying his best. And here he has these four Kumaras who were born from his mind, and he asked them to go ahead and populate the universe. And they refused. They said that, no, we are not interested in that. We are interested in only in self-realization. And so these four Kumaras one time came to King Pruthu. Pruthu was a very well-known king, actually created by Brahmanas. He was not born from mother and father. He was produced from a dead body of previous king Vena, who was a cruel person and who took the place of his father after his father died. But the ministers knew that he was no good. And it turned out that he was against the religion, he was against the Brahmanas. And so the Brahmanas conspired and through mantras killed him. And after killing him, now they needed somebody to take the charge of the kingdom. And so they did some other mantras and churned his arms. And lo and behold, King Pruthu was generated from that, and a girl was also generated. So two were generated, a girl and a boy. And later on, the girl becomes Pruthu's queen. Okay, so here we are, Sanat Kumars, they have come to King Pruthu's kingdom, and King Pruthu saw them and he knew who they were. And so he welcomed them, and he inquired from them for some more nectar of Krishna, Lila, and so on. And so here in chapter 22 of fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 31st verse, it says that Brashyatyanu smritischitam gnana pranshah smritikshaye tadrodam kavayah prahur atma pahanava matmana. So what is the meaning of that? The meaning is that when one deviates from his original consciousness, now here we are talking about our original consciousness, and when one deviates from his original consciousness, he loses the capacity to remember. This is a big thing, that one loses the capacity to remember his previous position, or loses the capacity to recognize his present one. So this happens because you are deviating from the original consciousness, and we all are. When remembrance is lost, all knowledge acquired is based on false foundation. So when you lose remembrance because of the deviation from the original consciousness, then you have got a consciousness that is not a true consciousness, but it is polluted consciousness. And because of the polluted consciousness, the knowledge that you acquire is going to be based on a false foundation. When this occurs, the scholars, learned scholars, consider that the soul is lost. So, so when you lose your original consciousness, which means the losing the capacity to remember previous position, also lose the capacity to recognize present one, and then the scholars would say that the soul is lost. Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that soul is said to be lost when there is no proper knowledge exhibited. So right now, we don't have proper knowledge, so we are lost. Our original consciousness is Krishna consciousness. We originally came from spiritual world, and our consciousness was Krishna consciousness, but we lost it because we are part and parcel of Krishna. That's why we have Krishna consciousness. When this consciousness is misguided and one is put into the material atmosphere, which pollutes the original consciousness, one thinks that he is a product of material elements. So this is the cause of why we identify ourselves with the material body. A dog identifies with his material body. We identify ourselves with our material body, the human body, and so on. Thus, one loses his real remembrance of his position as a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one forgets about that he is part and parcel of Krishna. And Prabhupada gives the example that just as a man who sleeps forgets himself, when we go to sleep, we forget ourselves. We don't know who we are. And when we have dreams and we identify ourselves with who that person in the dream is. And so essentially we have forgotten who we are. When we are awake and when we sleep, we forget ourselves. In this way, when the activities of proper consciousness are checked means stopped, all the activities of the lost soul are performed on a false basis. So false basis means material basis, because our consciousness is polluted by material things. So at the present moment, Prabhupada writes that human civilization is acting on a false platform of bodily identification. So that is a false platform, bodily identification. Therefore, it can be said that people of the present age have lost their souls, and in this respect, they are no better than animals. So this is the reason given. Now, in one more item, I will read it from today's message from Srila Prabhupada for December 19th, which is interesting. It says that the secret of surrendering to Krishna, and all this requires that we surrender to Krishna, be totally dependent on Krishna, is that such surrendered devotee sees that everything is part of Krishna's plan. Where whatever is meant to be, I am doing. Okay, whatever is meant to be, I am doing. So he has to think that let me do it with my full attention to every detail. So when something is given to him to do, then he should do it with full attention to every detail. Let me become absorbed in such service. Never mind what it is. You don't mind, it doesn't matter. You don't make a judgment on what kind of service. You don't say that, well, I should not have been given this service. I am too high above that. No, whatever is a service, be absorbed in it, and let all other considerations be forgotten, and only my desire to do the thing best for Krishna's alone pleasure is my motive. This was a letter to Jaipatak Maharaj on December 19th, 1972. So it kind of explains how absorbed you should be to do devotional service, always keeping Krishna in mind. And so concluding this chapter, it says that as all surrender unto me. No, wait, not that. Let's see. Okay. It was saying that be free from all attachments and fear and anger, and be surrendered to Krishna, and you will be delivered. So here it says being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me. Many, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So we will stop here, and if anyone has any questions, if anyone has any comments to make, if I have made any mistakes, and I do make mistakes, please forgive me and correct me.
Yes, I have two comments to make.
Good, thank you.
In the last translation, last page, you said the soul is lost.
Yes.
And I think there's something wrong in English translation, because soul is neither lost nor gained. It's always there.
Yes.
Only when an individual identify himself as the materialistic body, then he loses the concept of the soul. It's not lost. Soul is never lost or gained. It's always there. There's something wrong in English translation, doesn't give the core meaning. You know, like what you said, soul can never be destroyed by fire, this and that. So in a similar way, soul is not lost nor gained. It's always there. That's first comment. Then the other one.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Can I answer that comment first?
Yes.
Then you go to the second one. Prabhupada writes he starts out after this verse says that the living entity or the soul is ever existing and eternal. It cannot be lost, but learned scholars say that it is lost when actual knowledge is not working. This is the explanation Prabhupada gives. That is the difference between animals and human beings. So the soul is never lost. According to less intelligent philosophers, animals have no soul, but factually animals have souls due to the animals' gross ignorance. However, it appears that they have lost their souls. Many of the Christians believe that the animals that they eat, they don't have souls, so there is no sin committed. But Prabhupada has made it very clear that soul cannot be lost. But this is because of the ignorance that many of these philosophers write it that way. So your point is well taken. It's already correctly stated in the purport by Srila Prabhupada on text number 31 of chapter 22 of 4th canto. Go ahead. Your second comment.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for that explanation. And
Yes.
you have that conclusion page. Can you go one above that? Prior to the conclusion page. Yes. Experiencing fears.
Mhm.
And the definition which you are given for fear is
Mhm.
fear comes because of the wrong identification as the materialistic body.
Right,
And
yeah.
we don't understand or identify ourselves as the soul. We identify ourselves as the body. That's why the fear comes. That's the definition you gave before this.
Yes.
But here this reads, experience fear. Answer is no, yes. That answer is correct. That because they don't experience fear because they identify themselves as the soul, not the body. But
Yes,
here it is said, full faith in Krishna that he is always there to protect them. So the protection is what is making them that they don't have the fear because there's someone to protect me. But that's not the case. The case is they realize they are not the body, they are the soul. That is why they have no fear.
See, the very top line says that do the highly spiritually evolved people in their material bodies, and then various questions, experience fear. And it is stated that some of the highly evolved souls, they are evolved even though they have material bodies. So do they experience fear? And the answer is no, because when I say they are highly spiritually evolved, they are already self-realized. They know who they are and they know what relationship they have with Krishna. So the answer is no, they don't have. They have full faith in Krishna that he is always there to protect them. And this is because Krishna is everywhere, inside, outside, and everywhere. So they are solely dependent on Krishna himself. One of the things is that in this verse, it says that you have to be fully dependent on him. Take refuge in me. So you always depend on Krishna. And here, the answer that do they experience fears? No. And why? Because they are self-realized. They know that Krishna is there, and there is no need to fear. So your statement is well taken, but if you read the very first top line, then it falls in that place.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. The very first line says, evolved, spiritually evolved people, they definitely do not identify themselves as the body. They identify themselves as the soul. From that definition, it's absolutely correct. But there seems to be some translation problem here because that core definition fits in well for this answer no. But when you say they always to protect them, that is not the core definition of having no fear. No fear comes because they're evolved souls. They identify themselves as the soul, not the body. But here the word protection is what I find is the wrong English translation. That's not the protection. It's because the faith in Krishna, that is okay. Faith in Krishna means Krishna is the Purna Brahman. So that is the ultimate self, what they have to realize. They realize that. So
Yeah, I understand your point.
Yeah.
Thank you for pointing out that I gave the example that Prabhupada's son got afraid because the ticket master was asking for a ticket, and then he went directly to the father, and Prabhupada says that he knows who is going to protect him. So in this case, a devotee knows who protects him. It may be the English translation may not be exactly correct. We all have different way of translating things, but I take your point. Thank you. Any other question? Okay.
Thank you so much, Vaikuntesha Balaji Prabhu, for such a wonderful class and a nice discussion after the class. Anyone has any more comments or questions at this time? Okay. Before we go ahead, we will be starting Aarti here shortly. And then after the Aarti, we will just go through some announcements and talk through a few things. Before we start Aarti, one announcement I definitely wanted to make here because we were hoping to do this in person. I don't see them on the call. As some of you, or as many of you may know, Mani Prabhu and his family will be moving out of Austin in the next couple of, I think next week or so. Prabhu and family will be relocating to North Carolina for Prabhu's work. Mani Prabhu, Sukriti Mataji, Aparajit, and Krishav have been such an important part of our community ever since they moved here about 2-3 years ago. And we will definitely miss them here at ISKCON of Round Rock. And we want to pray for that wherever they go in North Carolina, they continue to blossom in their Krishna consciousness. So wanted to share that here before we did Aarti, in case devotees did drop, that I don't see Mani Prabhu and Sukriti Mataji here, but please do share your wishes with them when you do speak to them, because I think they'll be moving before that next time we meet. So I wanted to share that. The next part of the program is Aarti. We will be doing Aarti here from Sakshi Gauranga Prabhu's home. As you all can see, Sakshi Gauranga Prabhu and their family are hosting not only a temple, Shri Gaurnitai, but also Gaurnitai from Ramachar Prabhu, Laddu Gopal, and Little Radha and Krishna. So we have full, and of course Jagannath Baldeswar, they're there. So we have full altar there. And we wanted to do the Aarti from that home. So we will feel like we're doing Aarti right at the temple, and the Kirtan will be from their house as well. Sakshi Gauranga Prabhu, whenever you all are ready.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear Mataji? Mujhe jorti bol.
Yes, it's a little soft, but I think once you start the Kirtan, we should be okay.
Is original sound on?
Yes, come closer.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shanyavadi Paschat Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shiva
Gadadhara
Krishna Haribol.
Maybe Vaikuntha Shivaji Prabhu, could you just do Premadvani, please?
Is on mute or is he unmuted?
Yeah, muted right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Jai Vishnupad Paramahans Parivajakacharya Stotar Bhakti Vedanta Tridanti Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Patita Pavan savior of the fallen soul Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahans Parivajakacharya Stotar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। ISKCON गुरु परंपरा की जय। श्रील वेदव्यास स्वामी गुरु महाराज की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। व्रजभूमि वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर धाम की जय। नवदीप धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा मई की जय। श्री श्री राधा दामोदर की जय। गंगा मई की जय। जमुना मई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय। युग धर्म संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन की जय। साम वेद भक्त वृंद की जय। और प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Guru and Gauranga. All glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Jai.
Mataji, we continue with Narsimha Aarti or?
Yes, please, Prabhu. We can continue with the Shinga Prayers and we'll just do announcements after that.
Okay.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Samudri
Maharaj ki
Jai
jai.
Prabhu Premanande.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Lakshmana Prabhu, Mridakshi Mataji, Rishi, and Mohit for that amazing, amazing kirtan.
Thank you. Hari Bol.